Hello viewers, welcome to Medico Virally. Today we are going to discuss about pharmacology related to Parkinsonism. So what exactly is Parkinsonism? Parkinsonism is a neurodegenerative disease. So it is better than Alzheimer's. Okay. So normally in our life we have a balance between the happiness and sadness. So it's a mixed emotions. Am I right? So if there is any imbalance, our lives will not be good. In the same way, there must be a balance between acetylcholine and dopamine in our body. If there is any kind of imbalance between them, we have two important conditions named Parkinsonism and psychosis. So in the Parkinsonism, we have less dopamine and more of the acetylcholine. Okay. In the psychosis, we have more dopamine and less acetylcholine. So here what happens? In the balancing here, the acetylcholine is more, okay, and dopamine is less. This is known as Parkinsonism. So how could you remember? The word Parkinsonism has A. That means acetylcholine is sufficient in quantity, but dopamine is less. But in the psychosis, we don't have any letter regarding the A. So in this way, you could just remember the difference what exactly is Parkinsonism and what exactly is psychosis. So if there is a less of dopamine, it is Parkinsonism. And if there is less of acetylcholine, then it is psychosis. Okay. So regarding the Parkinsonism, we have to understand biochemical reactions that occur in our body. So why exactly there is a decrease in dopamine? So is there any problem in the biochemical reaction? Yes. So before that, let us understand how exactly is dopamine synthesized. So you all know tyrosine, when it reaches to this nerve ending, in the nerve ending, the tyrosine is converted into the dopa. This dopa again is converted into the dopamine and stored in the vesicle. Here the enzyme which is helping the tyrosine to convert into dopa is tyrosine hydroxylase, right? So now that we have converted, the first step is converting into the dopa, and the second one is release from the nerve ending. So releasing of the dopamine from the vesicles, right? So this will be the second step. And after that, the dopamine is released, and now dopamine must act. And after the work of dopamine is completed, there are two important enzymes, that is monoamine oxidases and catecholamine O methyl transferases. So with the help of these two enzymes, dopamine is degraded into free radicals. You all know what exactly free radicals will do in our body, right? So this is the third step. And the fourth step will be dopamine acts as agonist at their receptors. So they go and stimulate these receptors. So these are the important steps in the synthesis of dopamine and later the action of dopamine after its release. So what is the problem in Parkinsonism? Degradation of the nerve endings. Am I right? So what exactly I said? Neurodegenerative disease. So the degeneration of neurons. So most of the time there is no problem with the deficiency of tyrosine or with this enzyme, but the main problem is lying with the degeneration. So when nerve ending acts as a storage. So if there is no storage, how can dopa get synthesized? So you don't have any storage for your water in your house. So how can you use it? Only you can use the water when the municipality is supplying you. Am I right? So let's go into that story later. But up to now, you just understand nerve ending is a storage for dopamine. If there is no nerve ending, there is no storage for the dopamine, and dopamine is decreased. So when there is no dopamine synthesized in our body, the first step, what can we do? We can supplement it in the form of a drug, that is levodopa. This will be the first step. As levodopa alone is less efficacious, we add carbidopa to that. Okay, so we discuss about them detailedly in the next slide. And the second one, maybe neurons are good, but the vesicle is unable to get out from this nerve ending. So to help, we give amantadine. That would be the second step. It acts by releasing the dopamine from the vesicle. And the third step, maybe after the dopamine is released, before the action on the receptors, maybe these enzymes are hyperactive and they degrade this dopamine quickly. So they may degrade the dopamine quickly into free radicals. So one step may be inhibiting this. So the third group of drugs may be MAO inhibitors or COMT inhibitors, right? Okay. And what is the fourth step here? The fourth step may be in psychosis. What exactly I said you? In the psychosis, we have more dopamine and less of the acetylcholine. So as we have more dopamine, maybe in psychosis, the exact pharmacology lies with blocking these receptors, the dopamine receptors. Okay. So if any patient with psychosis has also Parkinsonism, so there are less receptors present. Okay. So to stimulate these less receptors, we provide a direct agonist group of drugs, that is dopamine agonists. There are two types of agonists, so we discuss later step by step. So don't get confused. 4 important reactions: maybe giving the supplement, maybe supporting the release, or inhibiting the enzymes, or directly acting on the receptors, right? Okay, so let's learn about the step 1. The step 1 is we have provided the patient with levodopa. Okay, a patient with Parkinsonism, maybe a 65-year female, came to your OP, and you have all the evidence for the Parkinsonism and you put a diagnosis as Parkinsonism. So as a doctor, you give levodopa. But is it sufficient? No. Why? Because levodopa has many friends and enemies in our body. Okay, so let us know who are the friends and who are the enemies. When you give the levodopa to the patient, and when levodopa alone is taken by the patient, in the peripheral blood circulation, the levodopa usually is converted or metabolized into dopamine. Suppose 100 molecules of levodopa enter into the systemic circulation, only 2 molecules will be left, and the remaining 98 molecules are converted into the dopamine. Okay, you may ask, yeah, what happens if it is converted? Yes, this is the main issue. Levodopa has the property of crossing the blood-brain barrier, because where exactly your levodopa should go, it must go to your nerve endings in the brain, right? So if it couldn't cross the blood-brain barrier, what is the use of giving levodopa? Yes, but if levodopa is converted into the dopamine, this dopamine could not cross the blood-brain barrier. Here there is a very good security, and that is named as blood-brain barrier, which kicks out the dopamine. For example, if dopamine is trying to enter this blood-brain barrier, this kicks out, so it couldn't enter, but levodopa could enter. So who is our enemy here? If levodopa is given without its security, so you must provide a security to the levodopa. That security will be provided by carbidopa. Why? The levodopa is converted to dopamine with the help of the enzyme dopa decarboxylase. So if this enzyme is present, most of the levodopa is converted into dopamine, and very less percentage of the levodopa enters into the neurons, nerve endings, by crossing the blood-brain barrier. So here we have to kill this enemy, the dopa decarboxylase. So this is inhibited by carbidopa. So this goes and kills your enemy, carbidopa and benzyrazide. So to get the pictorial memory, I just presented the Benz car. Okay, so benzyrazide, carbidopa. Okay, so when you give your patient the combination of levodopa and carbidopa, okay, now that levodopa could enter safely into the brain by crossing the blood-brain barrier, and carbidopa has attacked your enemy and killed, so it's all very good till now. But what happens, for example, if you do not give the carbidopa, what happens? Most of the dopamine which was released in the systemic, which was converted in the systemic circulation, this acts on these receptors. Just remember A, B, C, D, that is alpha 1, beta 1. This is the chemo triggering zone, CTZ, and D1 receptors. So if this dopamine which is converted from levodopa acts on alpha 1, it causes increased hypertension. These are all the side effects if levodopa alone is presented to the patient, is given to the patient without carbidopa. The one, if dopamine acts on alpha 1, it is increased hypertension, and if it acts on beta 1, arrhythmias may occur, and if it acts on chemo triggering zone, vomiting is the side effect, and if it acts on the D1 receptors, hypotension occurs. So these side effects were solved by carbidopa, right? That was our discussion. But we have another enemy also. For example, if a patient who came to your clinic, you have prescribed levodopa and carbidopa once a day, and you also unnoticingly you have given this vitamin B6 supplements. So this will be the most wrong step in the treatment, because vitamin B6 is the friend of dopa decarboxylase, right? So what vitamin B6 does? Vitamin B6 is pyridoxine. So pyridoxine is a cofactor of dopa decarboxylase. If vitamin B complex containing pyridoxine is given with levodopa, it will decrease its efficacy. So the levodopa's efficacy is decreased by increasing the peripheral formation of dopamine. Okay, so this helps in increased peripheral formation of the dopamine. That is the reason we must not prescribe the pyridoxine containing vitamin supplements, right? Okay, and let's have a small discussion regarding the psychosis and Parkinsonism. All the anti-Parkinsonism drugs can cause psychosis because of increased use of anticholinergic drugs, and all the antipsychotic drugs can cause Parkinsonism, because here in psychosis we use dopamine antagonists. That is, all anti-Parkinsonism drugs may cause psychosis, all antipsychotics may cause Parkinsonism, vice versa, right? And here I already said you, these are the side effects. These are the peripheral side effects, and we have two central side effects also, because if more of the dopamine is released and stored in the brain, so there may be two of the central side effects. We call it as psychosis, or another one may be dyskinesia. You just remember. And we have another important mechanism regarding the levodopa. For example, if a patient who is presented very late to your clinic, like Parkinsonism was already, for example, 3 to 5 years ago, and if he or she presented to you after a long duration of Parkinsonism, and now that you have started the levodopa, here we have one important mechanism named on-off mechanism regarding this levodopa. So to understand in a better way, I am coming up with a story regarding the water tank which is present in our houses. For example, the municipality supplies you the water maybe once in a day, that's it. So only when the municipality is supplying you the water, you will fill all of the capacity which you have, such as all of the tanks, maybe 1 or 2 tanks which you have, you just fill during this hour. So maybe municipality supplies in the 1 or 2 hours. During these 1 or 2 hours only, you completely fill all your tanks in your home, and okay, so that even after the municipality water is stopped, you can use all of the water which is stored. So here the example is referred as the storage capacity of the neurons for dopamine. So as this disease is a neurodegenerative disease, the storage is gradually decreasing. So maybe after few years, we have only three nerve endings, and after that maybe we have only 2, and after that only 1. So in this way, in late Parkinsonism, when we give levodopa, it controls symptoms up to 20 to 22 hours. After that, wearing off occurs. What exactly is wearing off? Wearing off is nothing but when levodopa is given, all the nerve endings are stored with dopamine. And whenever dopamine is needed, the nerve endings start releasing the dopamine. Gradually, after few years, if you are on a long treatment with levodopa, then gradually the nerves get degenerated. Only one nerve ending may be present. And now that even you give levodopa, it works only for 2 hours because you have less storage capacity. What is exactly levodopa doing? It is trying to generate dopamine, right? So if the dopamine is generated, and if you don't have the storage capacity, where can you store the dopamine? So the dopamine storage is decreased here. So even you give levodopa, but at the start of the disease when you prescribe, it may work up to 20 to 22 hours. But after few years, it may work only up to 2 hours only. So after 2 hours, the patient complains with Parkinsonism symptoms. So that is the rigidity, akinesia, tremors. These are the Parkinsonism symptoms. So in extreme cases, what can you understand here is, you don't have the storage capacity. Suppose, just take an example, you don't have the storage capacity in your home and you want to use the water. When can you use? Only when the municipality is supplying. Only in 1 or 2 hours you can use. That's it. In extreme cases, when you give the levodopa, dopamine is synthesized, but there is no storage, and that may lead to increased dopamine in the peripheral circulation, and that leads to the excess of dopamine, right? This is known as psychosis. During the off period, what is off period? Off period is nothing but there is no dopamine, lack of dopamine. This may lead to Parkinsonism, okay, due to the decreased or absence of the capacity. If there is less capacity, then we may have psychosis, and if there is complete absence of the storage, then we have Parkinsonism. Hope you all get it. If there is any doubt, please mention in the comment section. I will try to explain it again. And now that we have completed the first step by giving the levodopa, and we have synthesized the dopamine successfully, and the second step, after synthesizing the dopamine successfully, we have to release the dopamine from the vesicles. In few patients, the release may be a problem, and for that we use amantadine. This acts by releasing the dopamine from the vesicle. But we have main 2 side effects, that is, the letter A tells you, and this figure must remind you, the ankle edema, which may be reversible. That is, if you stop this drug, the ankle edema is reversible. And another side effect is livido reticularis. So this is the pinkish pigmentation of skin in the form of meshwork. Just remember the side effects, that's it. And recently, amantadine was approved for treating levodopa-induced dyskinesia, because amantadine is working as NMDA antagonist. Here in dyskinesia, we block the NMDA receptors. So this mechanism we will discuss later. But just remember, in dyskinesia, we have to block NMDA receptors. So amantadine is working as NMDA antagonist. Okay. So how could you exactly remember? The word itself tells NMDA antagonist. Antagonist is here. Okay, antagonist. So this is a way of remembering the amantadine, and we have completed the first step and the second step. And the most important is the third step. That is, the dopamine is converted or degraded into free radicals. So when dopamine is degraded into free radicals, two important enzymes are working. One is MAO and other is COMT. So we have to inhibit these two. First, let us complete about the COMT. They are catecholamine methyl transferases. So if you can inhibit these, then degradation and release or generation of the free radicals is decreased. So free radicals generation will be decreased or absent. So COMT inhibitors are of two, mainly entacapone and tolcapone. So you just remember in the way of spelling it exactly: ent cap on, tol cap on. If you can put a cap here exactly on these enzymes so that they couldn't work. So in this way you can remember the names of the COMT inhibitors, right? Entacapone and tolcapone. And another important point regarding the tolcapone is T for toxic and L for liver. So they could not be given in the liver failure patients, so they are toxic to the liver, right? That's all about the COMT. And we have to remember few points regarding the MAO inhibitors. They are mostly of two types. One is MAO A and B. A is present everywhere in the body, so most of the places, and B is present only in the brain. So that is the reason we only use MAO-B inhibitors. Okay, MAO-B inhibitors, the name of the drugs are salicylic, rasagiline, safenamide. These three are the names of MAO inhibitors, and as we have discussed in the previous slide, the on-off mechanism which was caused due to the levodopa. Further, recently safenamide was approved for treating the levodopa induced on-off mechanism. Okay, it was approved for on-off phenomenon of levodopa. And that was about the MAO inhibitors here. So if you can inhibit the MAO and the COMT, and there is no free radical generation. So in this way we increase the dopamine percentage also. That was the third step. And later the final step here is to directly stimulate these dopamine receptors, that is dopamine agonists. Here dopamine agonists are of two types, ergot and non-ergot. So if you can see the word non-ergot, it is lengthy when compared with ergot, and in that way you can remember these are long acting and they are safe, right? And just remember the names: bromocriptine, pergolide. These are the names of dopamine agonists. And non-ergot dopamine agonists are pramipexole and ropinirole. So non-ergot drugs are the drug of choice for Parkinsonism, and even they are drug of choice and used in restless leg syndrome, RLS. So these are the important points you have to remember here. And regarding the side effects of these drugs, when dopamine receptors are stimulated, there may be vasoconstriction which leads to gangrene. Okay, so this is more present with ergot drugs, that is bromocriptine and pergolide. We have ischemia conditions, but in non-ergot drugs we don't have the gangrene situations. And fibrosis is present with ergot drugs, and non-ergot drugs we don't have the fibrosis also. So these were all about the dopamine. And what was our important point when I said about the Parkinsonism? The Parkinsonism, we are trying to increase the dopamine, but even after all our efforts, the step 1 levodopa with carbidopa, and the step 2 amantadine, and the step 3 inhibiting the MAO and COMT, after all these efforts, still yet we couldn't increase the dopamine because the neurons are completely degenerated, and we are not left with any of the drugs which could work with dopamine. Now we have to think about acetylcholine. Okay, we are trying to increase the dopamine, but why not we try to decrease the acetylcholine? So this thought brought us to use anticholinergics in Parkinsonism. The four important drugs of anticholinergics are benzhexol, benztropine, bipyridine, procyclidine. Right? Here, anticholinergics are the drug of choice for drug-induced Parkinsonism. Right? You have to remember this point. Whenever there is a problem with the drugs and which induce the Parkinsonism, as exactly I said, and all of the antipsychotics may cause Parkinsonism. So in those drugs which are causing Parkinsonism, we have only choice of using the anticholinergics. We couldn't use anti-Parkinsonism and it doesn't work. So in drug-induced Parkinsonism, drug of choice is anticholinergics. And all of these are the first generation anticholinergics. Why we use only first generation? Because they can cross the blood-brain barrier and they have the anticholinergic activity. And recently, instead of benzhexol, we are using promethazine. Okay, so it is an alternative to the benzhexol in treating the drug-induced Parkinsonism. And finally, concluding this lecture, we are left with 4 important MCQs. The drug of choice for Parkinsonism is non-ergot derivatives, pramipexole and ropinirole. And the most effective drug for Parkinsonism, levodopa with carbidopa. Don't ever prescribe levodopa alone. And the third important MCQ, drug of choice for drug-induced Parkinsonism, benzhexol, also we can use promethazine. So choose benzhexol when it is in option even with promethazine, and when only promethazine is present, promethazine would be the right answer. Okay, and the gold standard for Parkinsonism is levodopa with carbidopa. This was all about the pharmacology related to the Parkinsonism. If you have any doubt, feel free to comment in the YouTube comment section, or else you could join the WhatsApp group, and there you can directly ask me. And if there are any queries regarding that, I will explain it in the next video also. And if you like the video, please hit the like button and kindly do subscribe and click that bell icon for instant upload notifications. And also please do share among your medical groups and friends. Thank you very much for watching.